Morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the today's Reuters Pharma webinar, which is titled "The Evolution of MedTech: Pharma Roles and Opportunities as MedTech Transforms." We're going to give people a couple more, maybe 30 seconds to join, and then we'll kick it off. So just hang in there with us for a couple more seconds. Okay. So let's kick this off. My name is Matic Meglic. I'm leading innovative industry partnerships for Novartis, and I'll be moderating today's session. Just a technical note. Obviously, we want you to be, able to ask questions. For those, we have a Q&A box. If you click at the bottom, you're going to find it at the bottom of the Zoom app, and you can type questions in there. And then at the end of the session, we're going to try to cover as many as we can. Now, in terms of context setting for today, when we look at how pharma and medtech create value for the healthcare systems and for the patients, there are many similarities. There's a lot of the patient journeys and or disease pathways that are shared across pharma and medtech where, they contribute. And also, patients across these journeys benefit from medicines or from medical devices. Sometimes it's consecutive, sometimes it's in parallel. Even if you look at the core processes that underlie the development of medicines and medtech products, and then the launch and the commercialization, there are some similarities. Of course, there are differences as well. But the interesting thing is that despite the obvious opportunities to co-invest, to share resources and know-how across these two industry sectors, there's surprisingly few partnerships crossing this divide. And this session is intended, to bring some of the senior industry stakeholders to share their learnings, to share the examples that they've seen, that they've worked on, to share future predictions on these opportunities. How do we successfully partner between pharma and medtech? And you're gonna see that we're gonna use digital health as one of the initial potential starting points for that. With that, let's move into the actual topics. I'll let the panelists introduce themselves, but we've got representation of ViiV, we've got Roche, we've got Novo Nordisk, we've got Merck, so really a strong participation today. And the one thing that we wanted to start with is what would be the area? So where do we think that the partnerships between pharma and medtech, could be most fruitful, and why? And we're going to be trying to uncover some examples, maybe. And opportunities. I was wondering, Maggie, could you send us on the way?
Yeah, no, thank you, Matic, and thank you to Reuters for hosting this webinar. I think this is an excellent topic. My name is Maggie Chernogorski. I am the head of digital innovation and implementation science at ViiV Healthcare on the medical side of the business. I'm also an active and practicing infectious disease clinician. So it's a pleasure to be here to talk about this topic. Honestly, I think there's a lot of partnerships that could be very fruitful in this space in areas that stem from disease prevention, diagnosis, treatment, and even monitoring, where digital health solutions can complement or enhance the use of our medicines. Two examples, I think pharma and medtech companies really have an opportunity to collaborate to develop and test digital therapeutics, things such as apps or software that delivers personalized intervention to patients kind of alongside medicines and really enhances that customer experience of people using our medicines. Another example is potentially the use of wearable devices or sensors that collect kind of real-time data on vital signs or symptoms, or even looking at things like medication adherence, and then provides feedback to patients, maybe alerts them when they've either missed a dose or if they're on track or if something's wrong, and then potentially even to share some of that information with healthcare providers so that we can create this seamless experience for our patients and in our healthcare system. But these partnerships really are a huge opportunity. Bringing pharma and medtech companies together, we have an opportunity to really create a more holistic and patient-centric approach to improve health outcomes and adherence, and potentially even work together to figure out how to support evidence for regulatory approval or reimbursement to really create the best kind of solutions for our patients.
Thanks, Maggie. Who else would like to share some of these areas? I think this was really interesting. Did Maggie leave anything critical out? Igor, I see you laughing. You wanna respond as well?
Sure. Yeah, I'll add my perspective. So, hi everyone. I'm Igor Menghini. I'm part of Roche. But Roche is a bit of in a unique situation. I'm part of actually Roche Diagnostic because Roche has two parts. There's a pharma business and there's a diagnostic business. And I'm happen to be on the diagnostic side, and where I lead the team that is responsible for software as a medical device and algorithms. And so I think there's definitely an interesting interplay because Roche happens to be in the, let's say, to have this in-house capabilities, but at the same time to partner with other pharma companies when it comes, for example, to companion diagnostics or to other diagnostic products, and to be more agnostic. And I think this is an area that by the bias of me working in this area, that's where I see a lot of potential for collaboration, right? As Maggie was pointing out, there are different stages in which those things can bring benefit to the patient. And I think really the ability to, for example, to include patient in particular trial, and so kind of even the screening part and the monitoring during trials, those are areas that are incredibly powerful and interesting, where there's technology, it's really an aid to help, let's say, existing processes that are already in place, and not trying to replace. I think this is also another interesting angle. It's there are technology that will enable new ways of doing things, and there are technology that will just make existing way of doing things slightly better and easier for the patient. I think that is a very, very powerful proposition that will shape a bit this industry.
And then Sophie, I guess from a diabetes perspective, if you look at Novo Nordisk, I mean, diabetes has definitely moved into this holistic. The companies in that space are really, we need to address diabetes as a holistic set of interventions. So, how are you approaching that, and what are the areas of interest to you?
Yeah, thank you. So just briefly to introduce myself before I dig into it, I sit in the Novo Nordisk Digital Health Strategy Product and Data team, primarily working in our strategy part across our diabetes, as you say, and obesity portfolio. And I really like what you touched upon, Igor and Maggie, especially around the patient centricity and, really truly coming together around that. And as you say, Matic, that of course, we really need to think about this holistically. In our case, we are very focused on maximizing the therapeutic benefits around our medicines to help improve the lives. That's where we come from. That's part of our core. So in many cases, most fruitful partnership for us is to help us achieve that. But that can be done in many ways. And I think you said a lot of it already, Maggie, but it's, around, helping us everything from discovering new treatment, augmenting our existing one, building beyond the product and the medicine. Or as you said, Igor, this around efficiencies. Can we do something, to give us more time, more efficient so that we can bring back more time for new innovation? And I think there's one example that perhaps, links us a little bit, Igor, as well, is that maybe, last year, Novo Nordisk, we celebrated our 100th year birthday anniversary in the insulin space. And it's taken almost 100 years for us to actually get the deep insights into how our products are being used in the real world in the hands of our users. So getting this information through our connected pen, as you may have heard of Novo Pen 6, for example, that's one part of the puzzle. But the other part is also bringing the pieces of data and information together. So that is one way where we are collaborating with Roche to bring the blood glucose data together. And I just think it's such a powerful example of how we need to put the picture together to truly improve outcomes, but also the opportunity that it creates in terms of, data sharing across.
Maybe, Matic, let me maybe step in and maybe double down on everything that was said. I think, the topic of today is partnership. And I think, confirming everything that was said, Pharma, at least, we cannot go anywhere without partnering with MedTech. I think this is part of the dilemmas we all have, right? Do we buy? Do we build inside? But I think we realized that, pharma is good on certain things, which is about patient centricity, which is about understanding well the disease, understanding well the drug environment. And you have tech companies out there, MedTech, health tech, that do have scientific technology expertise. And I think our role is really to partner and bridge the gap for the patients, for the HCPs, by bringing the disease understanding, the technology understanding together, and bringing the right products to the market. And yes, to build an ecosystem, and at Merck, we do have, if I take the example back on growth hormones, where we have digital ecosystems with drug delivery connected devices, with patient apps for patients, with web platforms for healthcare professionals. It takes a village to build this ecosystem, and that's only successful thanks to great partnerships that we have. So I think this is the key, and collaboration is, to me, the core of what we have to do to be successful.
Makes sense, and it's not easy. I think it takes commitment, it takes strategic investments, as we're gonna also discuss. The one thing, because I think you've given us a lot to think about, all of you. I think the one topic of interest for me, which I wonder if you've got some things to share, is also the partnering on the commercial side, because you spoke a lot about data, about clinical trials, around providing a holistic experience to the patient through the journey and optimizing this journey, making sure we get everything out of the therapy that we deliver. Any thoughts, any experience on commercial side of partnering? How do you approach payers? How do you approach hospitals, physicians? Any work done in that space?
Yeah, I can continue to build on what we do at Merck and the experience we have had in the last years, and we created, and this is the team I lead, a commercial operations team to put special focus on the commercial side of things. I mean, we realized that in previous year we spent a lot on working with the business, with medical, understanding what is the solution we need, what is the unmet need we are addressing. We spent a lot of time on developing the solution, but then when it comes to how do we bring it to market, but that's where there was a big gap and a big question mark for multiple reasons. I mean, number one, I think the pharma commercial organizations are not set up to partner with startups, are not set up to talk about digital. If you think about sales reps of pharma companies that are very good in selling drugs, they might not be as good and passionate about talking for 2 hours about a digital solution. So countries are not necessarily enabled to launch them, bring solutions into clinics, which often it's not only about handing over a solution, it's about convincing the lawyer of the clinic, the procurement department of the clinic, the CEO of the clinic, the data privacy department, and so on. You have multiple stakeholders you need to convince. So you really need to take a global stakeholder approach, make sure that everyone understands what's in it for them. And last but not least, and even more, it's really what is the value you create for each of those, right? I mean, you have so many stakeholders involved. If it's the patients, if it's the physician, if it's, you name them, if it's the clinic, the payer, in every solution you bring to the market, make sure that there is value for each of them, for them to put a skin in the game and allow you to be successful. But really enabling the countries, convey with the right messages and with the right tools is key to drive adoption of the solutions.
Igor, you want to share?
Yeah, if I can build a bit on what David just said, I think you hit the nail on the head, David, with building capabilities in the sales force, right? I think this is the other challenge that I see. Digital capabilities tend to be relatively low, although we are all consumer of technology, right? One thing is to use it, one thing is to present the value to the right stakeholders. And so digital literacy, understanding of privacy and cybersecurities and other things become very, very crucial when you start to have those conversations with hospital administration, etc. And you will be asked about those things. And so one of the things that we found extremely useful is to have a team that is dedicated to provide this kind of information, having a team that is very well versed in talking about cybersecurity, about data privacy, about all the common things that will be asked in a context that it's still relatively unknown, or let's say new, to a lot of hospitals as well, right? I mean, they're trying their best to be mindful and to be mindful of the data of their patient and the people that they take care of, and so rightly so, they are very, very careful on who they partner with. And so I think this is really one of the lessons learned from us, was that having ready-made material, having a dedicated sales force that can step in and help facilitate some of those conversations was an incredible multiplier of our ability to go into those organizations and sell digital solutions. And as you said, even though we come from the diagnostic, which is kind of closer to the device world, a lot of our field rep, etc., they all come from a science background, and they are sometimes not so comfortable with talk about technology. And so that is a step, that it's a journey that takes a bit of time, and the sooner you start, the better.
And just to add to that as well, Igor, it kind of presents an opportunity, or something that we should start thinking about, which is to kind of start with the partnerships earlier in the life cycle of some of these products, right? Because oftentimes, at least what I've seen in our company, is that we develop a medicine and then we think about the digital solutions that could be additive to help support the medicines, right? But is there an opportunity to kind of start earlier in the life cycle where we're co-developing, almost co-creating a patient-centric solution that includes medicines and digital health that is complementary? And when we bring it to market, it's kind of a package to really bring the best kind of healthcare to our patients in a kind of holistic way.
Maybe I'll do a loop then to add my feedback here. I really like what you started off by saying. I have so many things I want to react to, but you've said great things already. But David, you started off by saying, we've learned we had a lot of focus on the product, and then we also realized that 50% of the equation was also getting it into the hands of our users. And in our case, I think we do rely as well a lot on partnerships here, because we don't want to, bring new systems, new things, new interfaces to the hands of our customers. There's so much out there. As you said, MedTech, diabetes, for example, is really crowded already. And then I think that's where it's really essential that we do collaborate. Another thing that, building upon what you said, Igor, is this thing that, we are sitting in global, but making a one-size-fits-all from global that works locally is also not a realistic thing. And that's why both early, but very importantly, we have to do it together. We both have very focused on involving our affiliate and making market fit products, but also strategies to localize. But also actually very, very early, as you said, Maggie, this is my field, what you just brought up, how can we think in digital from the early point of view. We actually already at that point in time engaged with key markets to make sure that what we create is locally fit. And I think that's also a really important part of that equation.
And I think that actually brings us very nicely into the kind of the second topic which we wanted to discuss, which were the challenges. And both David, Igor, as well as yourself, I think every one of you mentioned some of them already. The one that I've come across was to Igor's point. If you're trying to commercialize something, you want to partner with someone who's bringing the right capabilities with you, the matching ones that you actually can commercialize. So you probably, in that case, you will not going to choose a very small startup with 3 people and a super exciting, innovative technology, but you might just go for something that's already been proven, that has a footprint. So just on that, can we maybe expand the topic of the challenges that you see? So this is the one that I've seen. The other one that I've seen, just to kind of to warm up a little bit more, was that it can take a massive amount of time to partner with big players. So if you have a big pharma company, you have a big MedTech player, it can take a year. I wonder. I see Igor nodding. I wonder if there are some. What else do you see out there that is really challenging when we start to partner? David, you want to kick us off?
Take a first step.
Igor, please go ahead.
I think I was smiling because it is indeed, it can take a while. And I think part of it is that our industries by nature tend to be risk adverse. We are by nature, trying to control and to mitigate risk at every step of our processes. And I think this is actually what leads to part of this slowness. And so it's important to understand what kind of risk profile you're going after. I think this is is it an app or an indication that it's going to be impacting the therapeutic journey of a patient? Is it something that it's simply providing additional information and maybe in the help of boosting compliance? So based on that, there can be different challenges. And I think one of the mistakes that I've seen often is applying the same processes across the board, regardless of whether it's like a low risk, mid risk, or high risk kind of a venture. And I think this is one of the challenges that it's reflected also in the processes that we have internally, right? Many of us have very, very established processes that were developed in a world where you come up with an idea, you go and work on it for 3, 5, 10 years, and then out comes a product and you sell it. And we're now moving into a world where things are much, much faster. You need to iterate. You need to understand how the patient is reacting to what you have maybe kind of put as a prototype and go from there. And I think this is where I see one of the biggest challenges, really this mindset of being anchored to our processes and being anchored to our way of operating that makes us somewhat slow, and being in a world that it's moving way faster than we can expect. And so that's to me, it's like one of the, let's say, philosophical challenge, if you will. It's maybe less practical, but really quite philosophical in terms of our industry.
And I think, I mean, suppose you said it right, and to be maybe a little bit less philosophical and more practical, I think the list of challenges, I mean, it's a very long list and I could speak here for a few hours. But I think that there are a few main ones. I mean, first of all, very often, as you said, today, the digital health startups are small. They are not for very long in the market. And also they may claim that they can do everything and that they have tons of experience. Once you start working with them, you start to realize that marketing was probably better than operations and development. So I think that's really the first challenge is when you select a partner, make sure this is the right partner and really do, I would say, a very detailed due diligence before you start. And it's not only about the technology, because technology of digital health, it's not rocket science. It's most of the time software. It's devices with Bluetooth. I mean, we don't invent any technology. We use existing technologies in medical applications, which is a very conservative industry for good reason. So the selection of the partner is key on the capabilities, but also on the team, on the mindset and the culture of the company. I think that this is one. On the side of the pharma company, I think that it would be a mistake to hope that the partner will do everything and that they know everything. I think there is I was talking earlier about partnership and collaboration, and this is really you are on this together, and you need to complement and bring some support to the startup or to the partner, and vice versa. If it's in terms of regulatory, if you want to launch in many, many countries, I mean, don't assume that those partners will have expertise and knowledge in all those markets. I mean, you may need to bring your people and your expertise in there. If it's about data privacy, you may realize that in some country you cannot launch because, I mean, you have been faced recently in the Middle East. Some countries don't allow data transmission from connected devices or don't allow mobile applications to transmit. And what do you do? How do you resolve that problem? I mean, the fact that you need to have local hosting in some regions and countries. I mean, all those challenges are coming on top. And definitely, I mean, at the end, and it's not necessarily specific to pharma and MedTech, but the quality of your partnership, and it's not a supplier, it's a partner, I think is going to determine your success.
Yeah, and I was just going to add to that. I do think the regulatory and kind of legal uncertainties and complexities in the digital health space, especially with SAMD, is something that pharma is upskilling themselves on, or at least our company is upskilling ourselves on, and that it's complex, and making sure that we understand how to navigate that road is something that we're figuring out. And more guidance is coming out from regulatory bodies, from FDA and the European Union. But I think it's an evolving space, and I think we just need to be mindful and patient and work through those processes. The other challenge, and David, you kind of touched on this too, is that I was going to bring up is the privacy and data security, right? A lot of these digital health solutions involve data collection, storage, sharing of sensitive patient information. So we really want to make sure that what we're building is secure and trust, and patients can trust it. There's a lot of sensitivity around patient health information. But if there is an opportunity, and I know this is a whole nother topic, but we want to create solutions that kind of serve our patients, but ideally they serve kind of the healthcare system. So is there a way that it can also be shared with the physicians, the healthcare systems? You know, if we're collecting data, is there a way to transmit that back to one of the end users, which is the healthcare provider, to make sure that they're kind of in the loop and making sure that these solutions are serving the best needs of the patients?
Yeah, I think really the one thing I wanted to expand a little bit, maybe David, because you've mentioned that the one thing that we've come across a lot also is the supplier versus partner. Obviously, I think I can speak for all. We probably get approached quite a lot by startups, by companies who want to scale up, and we engage with them, and then it turns out that they see us as the paying party in those relationships. So for us, one of the learnings was to be very transparent to these partners that they should not be looking at us as someone who's going to be paying to them, but that we should rather think about how are we jointly going to address the healthcare system, the healthcare payers, the healthcare providers, so that they can be successful and we can be successful without them relying on us, financially relying on us. I wonder, I think, Sophie, you probably see quite a lot of that as well in your space, I would imagine, because again, diabetes really requires a holistic approach with a lot of technology, a lot of data collection. I wonder how you're handling that.
Yeah, I'm thinking for all the great things that's been said, and I really like that you bring up transparency and trust. I think not only from who's going to pay for it and supplier versus partnership, but also this transparency and the capabilities behind it, and how much of it are we actually co-investing into figuring out together, and the skills behind it. At least my experience has been that over the last years, we've all learned that there are things we don't know yet together jointly, and that's something that we need to build upon and create. And I think that's just been really important to be transparent and open around that. And then another reflection that I had, which was a little bit back to the mindset part that you raised, David. We've also traditionally come very much from big bets, especially in pharma. And I think when it comes to digital, we also need to have a little bit more of a mindset of putting multiple bets on goal, trying different things, piloting things. So of course, it depends on the partnership and the size and what you're engaging in, but there are partnerships for commercialization, there are partnerships for early innovation, and things for testing in trials. There are many different ways, and I think we need to consider all of those aspects as opportunities for us to pursue, so that we try and learn across different angles.
I really like the topic of co-investing that you mentioned, because it's a good segue into the next big topic that we've agreed that for us to cover, for you to cover, which is around capabilities and who brings what to the partnership, right? Because again, the point of partnerships is that each party brings something of value to the other party. So we spoke a lot, and you gave a lot of examples of the MedTech bringing value to pharma. Maybe if we can look now into, when you partner, what's the value that you bring to the other party, be it a digital health company or maybe a more traditional MedTech company? Maybe some examples to share. Where do you see the gaps? David mentioned one already, which was around capability on the commercial side. How do you ensure that you have people who are able to tell the story to the customer? But I'm sure there's more.
Yeah,
go ahead, David.
just continuing on that one. I think, again, very often when you work with tech companies, I mean, they are very good engineers and they will be focusing on the technical product. But I think a very important aspect, I mean, beyond the commercial side of it, is really the patient or user centricity, which, again, I mean, small details are going to make a big difference in, is it successful, is it used or not? And I think that's also an expertise that the pharma company can bring, again, by representing the customer side of the story, right? So put yourself in the patient shoes, put yourself in the HCP shoes, think about, how do they behave? How do you make sure that those platforms doesn't consume more time or it doesn't create a burden on them? How do you make sure that those solutions work without a special support program, that they can really, think about, how do you duplicate the ease of use of an Apple device on your digital health and MedTech solution? Right? I think making things easy, knowing that it's not always possible in the world where we live, but try to really focus on patient centricity and usability is an important aspect that we can bring.
Sophie, I think you wanted to add, and I know Maggie also wants to add as well.
I mean, clearly with a product owner background, I like what you said, David, really representing the value of the value we can create for our customers. I think one more part to that is, representing the full picture of that patient or physician, the things around the medicine, things that create the holistic point of view. Another angle, if you think across our value chain, I think pharma can bring in is, of course, around our core, for example, from a clinical trial point of view, the scalability, where we're really able to test and co-create and build some things of value that we can start very early with and hopefully define new innovation together.
I was going to say something similar, Sophie, at ViiV Healthcare, we're 100% focused on HIV, and we know our disease area. We understand the unmet needs. We also are really good at clinical development and trial design, right? So is there an opportunity here? And what we're looking at is, can we partner with some of these digital health MedTech companies and bring in some of those solutions earlier into the process, maybe in the phase 3 clinical trials that we test alongside the development and the efficacy of the medicine to show the value and the value proposition of using these digital health solutions in conjunction with our medicines and how we can really improve health outcomes. How can we have that step change with using these digital health solutions alongside of medicines that are beneficial to everybody beyond just giving somebody a pill or a medication of some sort? So I think there's an opportunity here where, the MedTech side obviously has strong skills in engineering and software development, user interface design, data analytics, all these great things that oftentimes we don't necessarily have in some of our companies, or maybe we're building up in our companies. So let's partner with them to help us design those solutions together, but use our kind of clinical trial platform to generate data and evidence that these kind of collaborations have a huge return on investment, that they have a value proposition beyond just giving people medicines today.
There's a question from the audience which I think kind of helps us go into the next topic, which is around trust and around strategic intent. And the question is around how do MedTech companies partner with pharma companies? So how should they approach us to build a long-term partnership? But before answering that, I want to hear your thoughts on if you look at the things that have been going on in the last couple of, let's say, quarters, so let's say the last year and a half, we've seen some pharma companies shutting down or scaling back digital health initiatives, shutting down departments. We've also seen some completely buckling down, like Novo. So I wonder if there's if someone's coming from the MedTech side, what is the message that we are sending as a pharma industry? Are we consistent in the communication that digital health is a core element, or are we inconsistent and opportunistic? What are your thoughts on that?
I think I take the freedom to start to jump in. I think we are consistent, but a little bit like with every new industry, I think there was a little bit of a hype or a bubble of digital health, if I may, where it was a trend, and then everyone said we need to do something digital, and then and then everyone tried things. I mean, digital health is still relevantly new, and I think we had to go through a learning phase of what is a good digital solution, what success look like for digital health. And I'm not talking about digital therapeutics where there's a very clear objective, which is medical outcome, replacing a drug, getting subscription. I'm more talking about digital health for patient engagement around the drug solutions, retaining, acquiring patients, educating them, and all those different things. And here I think it took the industry to learn, and also the pharma industry to think about the buy versus build, or versus partner. I mean, do I do everything on my own? Or can I rely on small, agile, sometimes risky because they are small, partners, and that partnership, back to partnership, will make me more successful in a more efficient way. And I think this is what has changed. I think some of the industries, went very big, realized that there are ways to do it, in partnerships, with less internal efforts, but also that not every app is a good app, right? That you really need to focus, identify what is your unmet need. Is digital health the right solution for that? And when you start your project, make sure you already have your success criteria as defined. And now I think that when the industry starts something, maybe we start less, but when we start, we usually go further all the way to the end because we are convinced that this is going to generate value. And again, that's through the few years of experience we had to go through. We had successes, we had failures, we learned from it. And I think now the situation and the industry is adjusting to this new normal.
And Sophie, I guess that you could also argue that there are some pharmaceutical assets, some medicines for which digital is more core to its success than others. I guess, again, diabetes is a great example. So I would think I would imagine that for you, digital companion devices and solutions is much more central maybe to some other company that has therapeutics which maybe do not require that holistic approach. What would you think?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think we are definitely acknowledging that there's so much the medicine can do to help improve outcomes. Another big part of that is, of course, very focused around adherence and the societal factors around. And that's where digital can go in and address a lot of that. So it is a core part of what we do. And we acknowledge from a very early part and across a big part, the whole organization, that it has to be part of our patient-centric development for every drug that we do. And it certainly is. So I can only speak, of course, on behalf of, where I sit, but we are in no way crawling back down on our investments in digital health. In fact, we invest more, we do it more strategic and more earlier. And what you said, David, I completely echo that it's been a learning journey and trying to, test the water, try and figure out what you do yourself, what are your best skill to partner. It's a journey where we become a lot sharper on where we want to play and where we don't want to play, and where we believe we can capture more value from partners. And I think that's actually not necessarily a bad thing, but a bigger sign of more opportunities to realize that we need to collaborate together. So from that angle, I wouldn't see it as a sign, at least in our case, of not investing more or believing more in it, but just trying to acknowledge what our core capabilities are and where we want to be sharp in the digital space, and where we will rely on others to close that loop jointly in the ecosystem.
Igor, was there something you wanted to add? Because I think it's very much in your domain as well, right?
Sure. Yeah, I maybe provide a slightly different angle, sitting, let's say, closer to the MedTech, if you will. There's a flip side to it, which is, as a MedTech company look at partnering with different pharma, you want to try to build a solution that can fulfill multiple needs. And so this is a bit the flip of the coin, right? It's you can go out and build one app for each partner that you have, or you can start to try to build a platform that allows you to then quickly spin up new applications as it's needed and as a new partnership come along. But that is something that you can only do once you have enough time and experience. And I think just like Sophie and David already highlighted, right? There's a learning curve, and that is true also for MedTech, where you basically go through a learning curve. You build one product, two products, three products. You realize, actually, I can start to generalize some of those things. I can maybe make reusable components, etc. And then you start to kind of go towards a more of a platform approach. But that also means that you need to find partners that are willing to work within the constraints of what you've already built. And because every partnership comes with a bit of wanting exactly what is right for you. But there's also the acknowledgement, if you will, that there is compromise to be made when it comes to technology, when it comes to the capabilities that you want in your application, in your digital applications. And I think this is one of the inhibitors that has maybe also stopped some of those companies to kind of partnering, right? Because you go, okay, well, actually, this platform has these limitations. I'm going to go and build my own. I'm going to be much better off. And then you realize, oh, actually, that's not so easy. And I think that's where some of those learning came from many of these companies. I think it boils down to really to a learning curve, and this being a relatively new space, and we all have to kind of like do our mistakes and grow up a bit in the process, and until we get to a good understanding of where we want to go and where we want to play, and also as Sophie highlighted, where we don't want to play, where we say, hey, better partner with in that area.
What I would like to, sorry, Maggie, was there something you wanted to add?
No, just two thoughts there. So I agree with kind of the learning curve, but I think there's a variable level of commitment from different pharma companies in the digital health space. Some are digital first and all in, and I think there's some great examples of this on this call. And there's others that are just starting to dip their toe in this space. And so I think what is important as we're starting to partner and collaborate to move the industry forward is to really, because there isn't a gold standard just yet of how MedTech and pharma can collaborate, right? But as we see successes, as we see good returns on investment, as we see best practices, sharing that in forums like this or more publicly, I think would help advance the field altogether, because I think we're still all trying to figure it out. And like I said, there isn't a gold standard of how we collaborate between these two industries, but I think there's an interest amongst many to do so. So it's sharing more information and sharing how that path, that journey that we went on together, and then how that return on investment and how that benefit to the patient is really kind of achieved is something that's going to be important in the next couple of years to get more industry partners to come along. I would say, if anything, for MedTech companies, I would say trust and be patient. I think every pharma company you go to is going to have a different strategy on how they're going to engage with you and how committed they are to investing and partnering with different MedTech companies. So I'm sure that's frustrating at times, but I think there's an interest. And as we start generating this evidence and building the field, it'll definitely evolve over the next couple of years.
And you're actually already answering one of the questions from the audience, from Mark Paquin, actually, who was asking the question, what's the best way to approach, what's the strategy to engage with pharma for long-term partnerships? And I think a lot of the things that you've mentioned, you've already answered quite specifically. He's asking also, is there like a typical process to engage I guess all of us have our own processes of vesting these companies, of the due diligence, of quality assurance, etc., which I guess they're all slightly different, but in a way they all kind of cover the same principles, and these are unavoidable. I guess for every of the big pharma companies, there is that hurdle that you need to overcome to show that you're able to have certain quality control, that you're able to deliver, etc. But it takes time, it takes trust, as you said as well, to build a trust. Any other thoughts on anything that we've not covered when it comes to this question of any advice to a MedTech company that wants to partner with pharma? Anything that we haven't covered yet?
I think beyond the process, I think that the MedTech company needs to have a clear why. Right. We have, put yourself in a big pharma company shoes. We have a lot of different companies that wants to partner with us. Why should I partner with you? What is unique differentiation, the unique value you bring to me, right? How can you convince me to have a discussion and then identify, okay, are you a good or a bad company? Processes. There are different ways to overcome processes, quality management system, and so on. You can work on. But I want to understand, why you and not someone else. I already have partners I'm working with. What is the unique value you bring to me? How different are you from the others? And what's the benefit you bring to me?
And do you also experience the need to persuade both people at global or regional level with the overall value proposition of partnership, but then also the need to be able to demonstrate kind of in-market specific ability to solve problems? So kind of not just theoretically showing value, but also saying, in Austria, we can do this thing in 3 months. Have you seen that as well? Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because this is something that has, Igor, go on.
Yeah, no, one thing that I notice is that very often, and depends on how various pharma organizations are set up, but what I notice is that country level organizations sometimes will do local partnership to try out some specific need that cannot be filled by some. It's maybe not a priority for global at that point in time, and so there are opportunities, I think, both locally and globally. So maybe one piece of advice is don't focus just on the global footprint, right? There are specific local reality, local problem that needs solving. And sometimes might be with solutions that are not then applicable to other countries, right? We had some partnership on the HIV space in South Africa, right? In kind of a lower cost regions where the requirement, the constraints of the market are completely different from how you would roll out a solution, for example, in let's say in Europe or in the US. And so I think that there's let's say what if I can share one suggestion would be to not just think globally, but to think about, is there a local need that your particular MedTech or your particular expertise can fulfill?
Yeah, and I think, it makes a lot of sense. And actually, you're already also covering one of the audience questions from Lauren, who was challenging us on the duration of the time for pharma to adopt and to partner versus the life cycle of digital startups, which are running on a much more tight time frame. And I guess in a way, Igor, what you're saying is that's a good strategy for these companies as well. Like if you want to go, if you want to have a global partnership with a pharma company, you need to understand that there's going to be red tape. It's going to take a lot of time. But if you're tight on time, you can go locally, you can solve local problems, and with the local pharma organization, and there you can move much faster. So there is a good strategy on that. Great.
I don't know if it's the same, in every other company, but I'm curious. But for me, there's also a difference in what kind of MedTech. Is it a regulated or non-regulated? How are we going to handle the data? And there's certain things that, we don't necessarily advise that you partner for locally in the market, where that maybe is more suited globally. And those things also typically come hand in hand with being more complex, requiring longer timelines because of the nature of what it is. So I think there's also a balance just to be mindful of. And I wanted, if I may, just quickly throw back on one thing you said, Igor, this challenge that you have in MedTech of trying to build a platform approach of integrating into, something that fits across many partners. I just wanted you to think about it from the other point of view. We actually have the same in many cases. We also want to integrate across many different partners. We also build our own algorithm APIs that we wish to integrate in. And so I think we're all in that boat, and it's sort of a collaborative way that I think we have to come from both angles. So just wanted to ping back on that one. I think it's important to consider that it's a challenge both ways, as I see it.
And we've got another interesting one, which is kind of slightly at the boundaries of today's topic. But I think since we have Sophie and Igor who are in that space of, and all of you, Maggie as well, and David actually, which are kind of borderline software as medical devices, regulated market in a way. The question is around how do we establish effective partnership with the health authority? This is from Alex. Health authority in the digital age. The challenge being the same, the red tape on the side of the purchasing authority or the regulatory authority. How do you tackle those, especially in the cases where you already have bundled software as a medical device plus a therapy? How do you do that?
Maybe I'll take a first stab. I think there's definitely an element of education to be done, not only with the customer, but also with the regulators. And I see it very much as a partnership, right? I was at an event, actually, an in-person event a couple of weeks ago, and there were some regulators there because they are also still trying to learn what is happening in the digital space. There are gaps in regulator when it comes, for example, to AI that are just being filled right now, right? So they acknowledge that they are still learning, and they are very open to actually partner with companies. And so my 2 cents is to actually have those conversations, those discovery, in that discovery phase, in your initial phase, before you start going down the path of building something. Have those conversations, understand, what is applicable, what it's not, based on your risk profile, based on the intended use, based on the population. And I think the key things is really to narrow down with your partner what is the intended use. I think it boils down to me to the most critical thing when it comes to regulators is that they have a clear understanding of the intended use, and then they can help you in that process. Sometimes it does take a bit of education and a bit of back and forth, but I think our experience has been that it's been mostly a positive interaction. And maybe to go back, what does Pharma has to offer? Pharma has the relationship and the expertise and the understanding of how regulators think, and I think this is one other area where MedTech can really leverage the partnership and say, hey, you guys, I need your help.
And I think, I'm sorry, Sophie, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to echo that. I think I very much like what you said, Igor, on this collaborative approach also with health authority. I mean, there are gaps, and we have, we almost move faster than you can actually update the regulations. So we are, ahead of sometimes the curve in many cases because of the speed of technology. And I think that's also where we learn fast, and we have to help establish those guidelines and collaboratively shape it. So I just very much agree with that, what you said already.
So let's try to cover the one topic which I think is on everyone's minds. Maybe it's overused, but still I think it would be amiss if we don't tap at least a little bit into generative AI. There's a question. There's an audience questions on how do we try to collaborate with MedTech players on the topic of Gen AI, as both industries face this disruptive challenge. So both product-wise and generally ways of working. Do you take learnings? Yes, no, pharma collaboration. Any thoughts on this? It's a broad topic, right? It cuts across so many domains. So let's try to answer it as much as we can. Who wants to start? I see Igor and Sophie unmuting.
Yeah, so maybe one thing that I encourage people to think is to split this whole generative AI topic into something that it's part of the product versus something that it's just part of the process that helps you build products. And I think this is a very, very important distinction. I think many of us are already experimenting with the latter, right? how do you use generative AI to speed up your development, to speed up your documentation, to speed up parts of what is needed to build a product, to build a device, to build a or even to kind of like to fulfill your requirements from a regulatory and perspective. And I think this is the, let's say, the step one. Step two is when AI, and in particular generative AI, start to become part of the product. And I think that's a whole different beast that I think I encourage people to take it with a pinch of salt. I mean, as I said early on, we are a conservative industry, and I think there's a good reason for that. And I think I'm not saying don't embrace it, right? It's experiment, but be aware that it's not going to be an easy journey in going into that. Whereas when it comes to internal process, I think there's much more flexibility and much more things that you can do to integrate generative AI to support existing work that need to be done, to augment your capabilities rather than replace. I think this is maybe the 2 cents. It's think augmentation instead of replacement, and focus on more internal facing things rather than product.
And maybe just, I like the way you split it, Igor, very much. I think for us, we are still in early experimenting days. And I think, as you said, Igor, we're using it to, I mean, even for an inspiration point of view, you know, how can we optimize our existing process? What can we do to save time? We are also we have actually been quite early on the wave in terms of internalizing AI, so that we also have the security and the safety around the data and what we are using it for and what gets shared. We actually have quite a lot of internal users in the company that use it on a daily basis. So we are adapting it, but at this stage, it's very much on a process optimization point of view. That said, we are, of course, also investing and looking into how we can use it to improve our products and build into the products. But that's a little bit where we're still on a learning curve, I would say, and we're definitely, there's still going to be transformative wave that's to come.
And maybe just to
David, go ahead.
Just to add in 30 seconds, I think we have again to be careful that we don't, you know, go around Gen AI as another buzzword. But I think, like, you know, Gen AI, it's a technology, and we need to understand how we can use it, right? And what is the problem it can solve, how it can address unmet needs for the market. And I think we are still at the stage. I mean, I look at our company also, there's a lot of focus at Merck on AI in general, but I think we still need to educate people. And here it's again a cultural and mindset topic. How do we educate people to understand what AI can do for us? How it can make our internal work more efficient, as you said, Igor, but also by integrating AI into our products, Gen AI into our products, what kind of new solutions it can bring to patients and HCPs.
And I think with that, Maggie, unless you have something, you know, something short with that, I think, you know, just in respect of everyone's time, let's bring this webinar to a close. I've had a lot of fun. I want to thank the speakers, the panelists. It was a great sharing experience. I want to also thank the audience. I hope we've made it interesting for you as well in the audience, and thank you for the really good questions. Big thank you for to the organizers as well, Reuters Pharma, Carla Sharp. Thank you for making this a super smooth experience. And to everyone tuning in, the recording will be shared with you by the end of the week. So don't worry, you can replay if you want to. And with that, a big thanks again to everyone on the call. Have a good rest of the day wherever in the time zones you are, and see you soon.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.